going here. So thank you for coming to my talk today. It's great to be back in Belgium. It's been 6 years since I first gave my first talk on payroll, and this will be the first year on Peru payroll. So why is payroll important for us? Well, we wrote and maintained the U.S. payroll localization, or I guess we could say the original U.S. payroll localization. And it's important for us because we use it ourselves. So the Peru localization, similarly, is ultimately a thing that we needed ourselves. So we dove in and we got to know some people and talked and wrote rules and everything. And that's what we're going to be sharing some lessons with today. So payroll for us is a little bit different from stock Odoo, although it's getting there. We allow you to put in timesheets and attendances, commissions. We've got gamification. We've done a lot of kind of payroll things. And ultimately, we'll kind of see some of those along the way. So that's it for the slides. We can just get straight into live demonstration here. So the first thing to do is going to be to create an employee. You could do that from recruitment, but I'm going to go ahead and just go straight into employees and create a new one. I'm going to name him Luis, which is a remarkably common name in Peru. There's not a whole lot in here that's going to be super required, although obviously you should fill in as much of your employee setup and contract as you can. But one important piece, if you're not familiar, is the private contact. The private contact here is an address for the employee that will essentially accrue the disbursements for payroll, and so thus it's important. It also is created as a very special type of contact from this particular form, and so you should create it from here for that reason. That type is important because it's a private type, because ultimately you wouldn't want your salespeople, for example, to be able to just happen into contacts and find their manager and take a look at what their commissions or payroll looks like and things like that. All right, let's go ahead and save that. And now we're going to move into contracts. So here we are on the contract history view. Don't get too used to it. And we're going to come in and create a contract. So we'll go ahead and say that this is Luis 2023, though we're only going to start him at the beginning of the month. For this particular month. We will come down here and see that we have a salary structure type. And here we can pick one of our available structure types. We have a 4th category employee and a 5th category employee. There is no 6th category employee, and 1 through 3 is more for rental income and things like that don't really apply for payroll. For what it's worth, the 4th category is interesting because it's kind of a professional, self-employed kind of a thing. So this would be why would it be in our payroll? Well, because of the timesheet mechanisms and things like that can allow these people to enter timesheets into your system and for you to be able to report on what you would actually owe them and stuff instead of necessarily getting an invoice at the end of the month. But we're going to be focusing on 5th category employee. When we choose this, we get a payroll form new selection field here that pops up. We'll call this Luis 2023 as well, and we'll create and edit it. This is some important payroll setup specific to Peru. So we'll have a minor dependent, and we'll see how that changes some of the calculations that we see further down the road. Exempt from 5th category withholding is what it says on the 10 kind of a thing, right? We're not going to use that. Under retirement, we have a couple of different options here, and the form will update and change depending on what you have. Likewise, we have a variety of these AFP types, which we'll get back to towards the end of the talk. We'll put in a pin in that. And over on the company services, social services here, we have the government provided one or a private provided one. So let's go ahead and save it like that. And we will go ahead and come down to the important piece, which is the salary. So we're going to give this person a 3,500 Peruvian soles a month salary. And we'll go ahead and hit save. And no, we won't. Does anybody else remember the time when you could visually distinctively tell what required fields were before you saved a field? I do. All right, so with the contract complete, one important step or gotcha is that this contract must be running for us to automatically discover it in payroll and for most of the features to work. So with that setup complete, it's time for us to make our first payroll. So slips. Normally, I would suggest making a batch, right, where you can select several employees and structures and stuff like that, and you'll get them all at once. But for demonstration purposes, and especially on very new contracts or new employees or something, it's usually best for you to go ahead and observe a payslip from start to finish kind of thing. So we will choose our Luis employee, and you'll note that it pulled in the contract and it pulled in the structure. This is the default structure for 5th category. There's actually a second bonus one that we'll put a pin in and get back to that one later as well. The workdays and stuff calculates, and when we hit compute sheet, we can come over to salary computation and see all the various lines for individual contributions. So the AFP types and stuff that we saw, as well as this household allowance here, which is actually the checkbox for has dependents kind of a thing going on. All right. So now that we've kind of completed this one, we'll go ahead and create a draft payslip. And we will congratulate Luis on his first payslip and all of the money that he just received. And might as well mark it as paid, although I don't think that's important for the demonstration. So now that we've seen a single payslip, let's go back and get those batches. So we'll go to batches this time, hit new. We'll say December. And we will pick the date range properly. It's not a range picker. All right, so we'll push this generate payslips button and we'll get our couple of employees here. This is an override to allow us to pick a different salary structure that we would run for them, which will be important for this bonus, but we'll get to that a little bit later. When we hit generate, we will see that we have a smart button for 2 payslips, and those payslips will be for our current employees, and they will be essentially already ready to go, meaning that the salary computation will have already occurred. So generally, you would complete the batch rather than an individual payslip. So we'll go back up to the batch and hit create draft entry. Let's go ahead and go and look at that draft entry real fast. So this draft entry will be shared, or should be shared, between the 2 people. And we will see that we have different private addresses that collect up the net for the different employees, as well as the reporting of the Social Security and stuff to Sunat, which is the tax authority. They're like the IRS. All right, so now that we've seen a payslip and we've seen a payslip batch, maybe it's time to talk about some of these kind of more interesting parts of how payroll itself works. So I'm going to go through this a little bit fast. It will be recorded, and I think Odoo is having their own talks on this stuff as well. So on the contract, we saw a structure type, but on a payslip, we have a structure. And I mentioned that there is a default. When we click on this 5th category here, we'll see some configuration for the way that the particular salary structure type works, and we'll see a smart button to link over to the particular structures themselves. So let's focus in on this simple structure here, although we should probably go ahead and touch on this one first, right? So this one is set up to use worked day lines, and it has unpaid types. But the bonus one is special. So the bonus one doesn't use work days, and it doesn't have unpaid types, but it does still have salary rules, right? Salary rules are what generate the individual lines that you saw on the payslip, and you can think of them as essentially configurable functions for the purposes of collecting payroll information. Let's take a look at this one here, and we'll see that we use the rule parameter to grab special configuration that might change over time. We also grab the inputs from the initial slip kind of a thing, that or from the first page underneath work entries, and that is I mean, this is how this particular rule works. There's not much going on in it, but it does show 2 very important things that you can use or should use when you're writing your own payroll rules. All right, so let's go ahead and go and look at the rule parameters, as they're interesting. So here's the salary rule parameters for Peru, for example. And if we come into this EEAFP, we're going to note that this is the drop down that we saw earlier for those different types that I said we put a pin in. So we take it out, and this is really where that data comes from. They're rows in one of the individual salary parameters that the salary rules use. You'll note that this actually changes quite often. So Hibou has developed a mechanism we call payroll updates, which is a way for us to be able to, an error, to be able to deliver the payroll rates over the air, so to speak, over the internet. You'll be able to collect rates for specific modules, and we send back the current parameter codes, which is the only way that this database got the parameter that changed like last month, right? All right. We briefly saw other input types, but keep in mind that these are attached to the structure itself nowadays instead of the rule. And these input types are used to, for us, primarily to override or to add extra things like extra bonuses or extra salary or something like that. So let's go ahead and go on over to a payslip, and we'll create a new payslip for December for Luis that is the specific structure type. All right, so we're going to change it from 5th category down to the 5th category January, December gratuity. This is essentially an extra payslip run that happens in July and happens in December, which is a month of extra salary divided by however many full months that you worked. So when we compute this sheet, we'll come down here and note that we pre-compute the 2 full months here, because that's how many months that Luis was working in this particular system for this payroll. And if we go over to salary computation, we'll see that we have something on the effect of 1/3 of the salary or 2/6 of the salary allocated, as well as some household allowance that comes from that minor dependent checkbox that we saw. We could, of course, come back over here and override this to say 3 or something like that, and recompute the sheet, and that will change, update accordingly. And that is generally all there is to payroll in Peru. We did briefly mention the 4th category employee, but that's more of a professional that would be more on timesheets or something like that. And with that, we can start to open it up to questions. But before I do have a question that comes quite frequently, which is that this is actually, as of very recently, now available in both enterprise and community. All right, let's open up for questions. I have a pad on this bottom of the slide here for anybody that would like to go and ask questions on the pad. Should I go to the pad now?
Yeah. So yeah, I encourage anybody that has question to go to the pad. It will be much easier. Maybe a first question to start. Why did you choose Odoo and not another payroll tool that you could have used?
Why did we choose Odoo like 6 years ago?
Yep.
Because we do everything in Odoo. So we do all of our shipping and our accounting and everything, and ultimately keeping all the data collected up into one place makes it significantly easier to remit payroll and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And did you face any challenge through those years? What were the biggest? How did you manage to solve it?
I would probably say the biggest challenge is the constant refactors. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into maintaining payroll localizations, and some of that is the refactors, and some of that is maintaining the data for sure. So Peru's data is a little more simple than the U.S. data, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't get updated. In fact, more frequently than the U.S.
Okay. And in case of like inflation, for example, or like you need to raise all the salaries by 10% tomorrow, how easy is that to deal in Odoo to configure? How much time it will take?
Server action in 15 minutes.
All right, fair enough. Okay. I'm connecting myself to the pad. I don't know if anybody insert any questions. I think they're writing down.
All right, perfect. Thank you all.
Or the link is quite long. Oops, Payroll.
Okay. So there is, I want to say PSE or something like that, 0506 are exports that you would need to do to the Peru government. Ultimately, your accountant can file those without necessarily using anything. But there are modules available in the App Store for sure from other developers in Peru that file those reports and stuff.
Any other?
How long does it take to configure a payroll localization? So it takes virtually no time to configure any of our payroll localizations. It's more about configuring your payroll overall, meaning the salary for individuals and things like that. Configuring the localizations for us doesn't take any time. Perhaps we mean how long does it take to make a payroll localization? And that can definitely vary. So the more simple the country is, the fewer the rules and regulations and stuff, obviously, the more simple the payroll localization is. Would I like to put my work as an official module for Odoo? Actually, why don't I make this bigger? Maybe, I don't know. So the fact that we support the community and stuff might mean that that it becomes more open source over time. There's a chance for that, pretty good chance. But talk to us about it if you're interested. How often do we check for the rates? Once a week, I believe, right now. All right, thank you.